Hey, welcome to 1500ESPN.com. I'm Derek Wetmore and this is Andrew Kramer. We're out at TCF Bank Stadium where the Vikings and Bears just wrapped up their season. Minnesota wins 13-9 and finishes 7-9 on the season. Finally get the first division win in head coach Mike Zimmer's tenure. They'll finish 1-5 on the season in the division though, so by no means is that a good mark. A lot of reasons for optimism for this team, but we try to balance that out too with the fact that this team will miss the playoffs. A lot of things went poorly for them this season. There's certainly some bright spots, Andrew, as we've sort of talked about, but at the end of the day, they finished below 500 and are on the outside looking in on the playoff picture. We'll talk about this Chicago game. We'll also talk about some bigger picture stuff, whether it's Xavier Rhodes, Teddy Bridgewater, even some linebacker discussion, Audie Cole, Chad Greenway stuff on this video. We'll also get into all that on the Purple Podcast too, so be sure to check that out this week. I'm sure it'll be great, Andrew.
Might be.
Well, it's a bit of a gamble to say that because now we have to perform. But anyways, the Vikings beat the Bears with Jay Cutler back at quarterback. What did you think was the biggest key to this game specifically before we get into the bigger picture?
Oh, well, really, it was just limiting Jay Cutler downfield. I mean, he finished with just 4.8 yards per throw, and that was against a defense that he had torched just 6 weeks ago. He threw for 330 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 to Brandon Marshall. Obviously, Marshall was not playing in this game, so that allowed Mike Zimmer to use Xavier Rhodes to shadow Alshon Jeffrey. Remember, that's something he wasn't doing just 6 weeks ago against the Bears. They were just playing strictly Rhodes on the right, Robinson on the left. This time, Rhodes was following around the top receiver the entire time, and without Brandon Marshall, that certainly helped them focus more on Alshon Jeffrey and get Xavier some help at times. But because of that, Jeffrey caught just 2 catches for 34 yards on 5 targets. Rhodes did a great job, even had 1 pass deflection, his 18th on the season. So that was great for them to see. But the biggest thing was they allowed Josh Robinson to get better matched up against receivers that were more of his size, his skill set. He didn't allow any catches today, so it's good for him going out like that. Other than that, they were able to get a little bit of a pass rush on Jay Cutler, but the biggest thing was it was a Chicago game plan that didn't want to try and stretch the field too much because they knew the pass rush was coming. So it was just sound tackling by the linebackers, including Audie Cole, as you mentioned, who finished with 13 tackles, a team high in just his 6th career start.
And we'll get into Cole in a minute, but Matt Forte, too, was not the dynamic impact on the game that he was just in the middle of November.
No, and they wanted to get him going. They wanted to get him going, especially on those rail routes. They're trying to get him out into the flats and down the sidelines, paired up against linebackers, try to get those mismatches going. That wasn't working. At one point, Matt Forte had 6 catches for 7 yards. That means those linebackers and those corners are doing a good job sealing the edge. And really, you could tell the Chicago team, with not much to play for, really did want to get that record to Matt Forte. Forte ended up finishing with 102 catches on the season. That is a single-season record in the NFL. I believe he surpassed a mark of 101 set back in 1995.
Yeah, impressive on the whole. But yeah, the Vikings were able to limit the 2 biggest offensive weapons that Chicago has. Still not a great offensive performance by the Vikings by any means. Had 1 offensive touchdown, that a 44-yard strike to Adam Thielen. 13 points, maybe a little bit disappointing, but it was enough to eke by with a win.
Yeah, it really was. They were just kind of spotty on offense, but when you have a defense that was limiting Chicago to just 3 field goals and holding them out of the end zone, that's really all you need. And that's something that the Vikings didn't get last week in Miami, if you remember, where they gave up 35 points and 37. Teddy Bridgewater has to go and put up 35, and that's not enough. So it's the inconsistency with this team. It's the on and offness. You can't count on the offense this season. You couldn't count on the defense this season. One unit would show up one day, one would show up the next. So really, that's why we're sitting here at 7-9 for the Vikings.
Yeah, interesting developments. But the one thing that came out of this game that I was really curious to see is, would the Vikings shadow Alshon Jeffrey with Xavier Rhodes? Now, they did that, even moving him into the slot at times, similar to what they did a week ago in Miami against Mike Wallace. How do you think that could help Mike Zimmer's defense going forward, knowing that they might have a cornerback who could potentially take on the opponent's top receiver?
Well, here's the thing. You don't have a full secondary that he's looking to work with yet. You only have pieces. So what he can do right now is take one of the pieces he knows he's going to work with in the long run, that's Xavier Rhodes, and test him and see what he can do. Remember that first game he got put in that shadowing position against Calvin Johnson 3 weeks ago in Detroit. Mike Zimmer's quote was, hey, there was nothing we had to lose there. If he screwed up and we gave up 3 touchdowns, well, oh well, we're 6-10 instead of 7-9. So that's the kind of mentality they had with these kind of players, knowing that this was a lost season in terms of the playoffs, and they could just see what they had out of their secondary. So to me, showing the confidence in Xavier Rhodes to have him be able to shadow not only Calvin Johnson, but Mike Wallace and now Alshon Jeffrey, and really do a decent job against those guys. That gives you confidence in the future, knowing that, hey, if you have a weak spot next year in 2015, you can easily try and cover that up with a guy like Xavier.
Yeah, totally. How about Audie Cole's performance? He kind of made splash plays all day. Even would have had an interception if not for a Corey Wooten offside penalty, negating a play in which he did pick off Cutler's pass. What did you think about the linebacker's impact today?
Yeah, I asked Audi after the game, does Corey owe you dinner or something like that? And Audi just basically said, no, man, I told him it was all right. There was another play where Audi had jumped off sides and negated a different play. So, there were just some mistakes here and there, but really Audi Cole, he went out of position here. He is a strong side linebacker. He is technically supposed to be Anthony Barr's backup, and yet they moved a guy like Gerald Hodges from that weak side to the strong side when they needed to fill in for Anthony Barr before. Now, when they needed to fill in at the weak side again, they decided, well, we don't want to move Hodges again. We're going to instead try and teach Cole to be on that weak side. And Cole did a great job. 4 tackles on the first 6 plays, ended up with a pass deflection, could have had another interception, as you said, and then had 1 tackle for a loss. It was a great game by a guy who really got no playing time at all in Mike Zimmer's defense this regular season. His first chance he gets, he goes out there and shows everything he's got. And to the Vikings teammates, that wasn't much of a surprise because they all pointed back to last year and said, hey, this guy filled in a middle linebacker and had 13 tackles at Green Bay. Did you already forget that? Well, even Audi Cole forgot that because he said, hey, I don't necessarily remember those kind of games that I had. He's just trying to go out there and do what he can because there's no guaranteed spot on Mike Zimmer's defense.
And the other reason that Cole was in, of course, the injury to Chad Greenway, who his season ends prematurely, and as there's some speculation whether he'll even be back with the Vikings. Probably they'd have to restructure his deal, I would think, but I don't know any of this at this point. How big was that for the Vikings?
$8.5 million, or excuse me, $8.8 million on the books next year for Chad Greenway for a 32-year-old linebacker that's already. This is just since turning 30. He's broken his wrist, broken his hand, and broke 3 ribs, and now he has a knee injury. That's a lot just in the past 2 years. So you got to worry about his health. Is he durable enough? Can he hold up? When he plays and he's healthy, he still shows that ability, at least as a sure tackler. This is the first time in 7 years he has not led the Vikings in tackles. He came in second this year, and he only played 12 games.
Yeah, amazing. Quickly, on Bridgewater, before we wrap up here, and actually one final note, the Vikings will draft 11th?
Yes, 11th. We got to get that in there. Yeah, the Vikings will be drafting 11th in 2015. They could have drafted as high as 7th with the loss today, but obviously they won.
Just a quick take on Bridgewater. What did you think of his day against the Bears?
He finished his 3rd all-time in rookie completion percentage. I thought he did a great job. These last 5 games, he's averaged 72% complete. It's really a great hot streak against decent defenses down in Miami, in Detroit. So I think he can only be positive, and obviously the Vikings are only positive right now about their rookie quarterback.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming to 1500ESPN.com. For Andrew Kramer, I'm Derek Wetmore. We'll catch you next time.